If you're a fan of theme parks like myself, you've probably read a lot of news about a particular dark boat ride these past few years. What you might not know is that Disney isn't the first theme park to trade out Brer Rabbit for a fresh new re-theme. Tales of the Okefenokee was an opening day attraction at Six Flags Over Georgia back in 1967, and would later receive a refurbishment courtesy of Sid and Marty Krofft. The ride would close down in 1980 to make room for its new residents, which are still delighting and terrifying guests today. It's an attraction that frightened me as a child, but has been a constant fascination ever since. We even made a short documentary all about its history back in 2020. It's a unique dark ride filled with over 100 original animatronic characters, right here in our own backyard. And in December 2023, with the help of some incredible staff members in the animations department at Six Flags Over Georgia, we were lucky enough to make one of my greatest dreams come true. We took a full walking tour of the Monster Mansion. The Monster Mansion received a refurbishment back in 2009, courtesy of Gary Goddard and much of the team who worked on the first incarnation of the ride. Fast forward to the 2020s and the mansion was due for a little more sprucing up. Enter Douglas Kincaid of the Kincaid Character Company. The Kincaid Character Company has been creating mascot costumes and puppets since 1977, and Six Flags has been one of their clients since the early 80s.
As a 16-year-old, my first job ever was at Six Flags St. Louis, and I was an usher. Worked in the puppet theater. At the end of the season, they needed somebody to be a costume character, which I was unfamiliar with, but they needed people. So that's how I got started in the mascot business.
So when the Six Flags Over Georgia animations department found out they'd be receiving a designated budget for a major refurb of the mansion, they naturally asked Doug if he'd like to be a part of it. But this would be a bit different from the mansion's last big refurbishment project. The total budget would only be 1/30th of the amount allocated for the 2009 refurb, and the entire project would be done by a team of 4, Douglas Kincaid, and the animations department consisting of Tommy McMillan, Daryl Obermeyer, and our fearless tour guide, Mark Jones.
I grew up here. I grew up 5 miles from here, so getting to work on it's pretty cool. But it's just enjoying the history of the ride and trying to stay within what the original theme, but kind of modernizing it a little bit. This room, if you look at all the old YouTube videos, it was dark. Couldn't see anything, and it's got beautiful architecture that we wanted to highlight. Our paint shop did an amazing job cutting all that in and making that stand out. We got new furniture. This was old and rotten away, been there since 2009. Got our camera system working again. All the artwork is original Phil Mendez artwork. It's the original stuff. It was actually in a box in the back of our sign shop for years. Doug saved it and we put it on display for the guests. I think it used to be in the Monster store back in the day. That's actually got his signature on the back of it, which is pretty cool.
Douglas recalled that there was little supervision from Six Flags Over Georgia upper management during the refurbishment, giving the team complete creative freedom. As long as things looked good and were of good quality, they were happy. The Kincaid Character Company was in charge of reimagining and reskinning 19 key Monster Mansion characters. This meant updating costumes, adding props, and even replacing fur.
Corlecto's working on today. That's why he is stripped of his skin. But yeah.
A relatively straightforward task back at their workshop, but these monsters are what you might call homebodies. It's hard to travel when you weigh several hundred pounds and are attached to dozens of electrical connections and air hoses. Each animatronic would have to remain bolted to the floor and worked on inside the damp and humid confines of the 25,000 square foot mansion. Douglas told me he was often envious looking at footage of the monsters being worked on in a well-lit workshop back in the day.
We did have to move them when we did the stage.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
Where you put something this big to...
Right here.
One of the Marshall Billy Bob Fritter animatronics is bolted 7 feet in the air on the roof of a 1920s Ford coupe, which meant one of the workers had to climb onto the slippery steel car anytime they worked on him. The previous costume vendors for the mansion focused mostly on theatrical costumes, which looked great but proved to be difficult to take off and clean. Most of them were one piece and relied on snaps, zippers, and hook closures, so even servicing a small area of a character like an arm or leg would require them to remove the entire costume. And with Monster Mansion being a water ride, many of the snaps would become rusted over time in the damp environment. The team at Six Flags voiced these concerns to Kincaid during their initial meetings, which led them to focus on costume practicality Each new costume is now 100% machine washable, backed with foam rubber to remain wrinkle-free, and uses Velcro as the only closure system, removing the need for those rusty snaps and making it convenient for the animators to remove costumes when needed.
Of course, the animations department has been great to work with, and they submitted pictures that they found on the internet of what the new costumes would look like. The pictures that they sent me that they liked online, to me, reminded me of kind of a Monsters, Inc. kind of look, that kind of modern, I call it, it kind of dates me how old I am, the Ren and Stimpy kind of look. It looks more cartoonish, and I like that look. So in thinking of the new costumes, I wanted to, as a costumer, make it look like you were kind of moving through a cartoon.
They also replaced all of the monsters' faux fur with Muppet fleece. The previous fur had been uniformly applied over entire animatronics, covering up a lot of small details such as fingers, toes, and facial features. The new Muppet fleece would help bring out those sculpted details, as well as provide some bold new colors for the monsters.
It's got a lot of furs. It depends on how the person last did it. If you put a lot of glue on there, you're spending hours peeling it off. But if they didn't put a lot of glue on there, sometimes it just comes right off.
The refurbishment of these 19 characters took a little over a year and used nearly 1,000 yards of Muppet fleece. Animator Mark Jones insisted that they refinish each monster from every angle, including areas that won't be visible from your ride vehicle. The guests may not know these areas are unfinished, but I'll know, he said. Kincaid was happy to oblige. The Kincaid Character Company also added a slew of new props and gags throughout the ride. Eagle-eyed riders might notice books that include the names of Sid and Marty Krofft, Gary Goddard, Dave Gingenbach, Albertino, Phil Mendez, Dick Hamilton, and many of the past and present members of the Six Flags Over Georgia Animations Department. But the monsters weren't the only thing that received a makeover. Animations Department Specialist Daryl Obermeyer, described as the Claude Coates of the Animations Department, installed hundreds of major set pieces, including furniture, artificial food, new barrels and cannonballs for the Marshall's iconic cannon scene, and thousands of plants, trees, and flowers throughout the mansion. Adding plants to a ride sounds like an easy task until you find out that each flower had to be installed one at a time by tediously drilling tiny holes into concrete. The entire process took about 2 years. Mark Jones, described as the John Hinch of the animations department, was focused on animatronics, lighting, audio, and updating many of the effects throughout the attraction. When he wasn't personally selecting the color and costuming for each monster, he was hard at work enhancing lighting and audio throughout the mansion. He's also responsible for many of the special effects, such as the smoke emitting from Billy Bob Fritter's police car and cannon, and the projected monster face that welcomes frightened riders to the marsh.
Yes, right this way.
He and Daryl also added scent boxes in a few key locations, pumping in the smell of popcorn and apples, among other smells. And for the holiday season, they added several fun Christmas props throughout the mansion, and even newly recorded Christmas-themed dialogue for Mizzy Scarlet. And as if all of that work wasn't enough, the Kincaid Character Company pitched the wild idea of creating full walk-around costumes of some of the Monster Mansion characters. Six Flags enthusiastically agreed, and even let them use the original Mizzy Scarlet animatronic mold to help create her mascot costume.
Usually it takes about 12 weeks to build one of these big characters, but in this case, my friends here are carbon copies of the animatronics that are inside in the ride. So we already had a lot of the patterns, and that helped.
And I can confirm from experience, they give great hugs. They made their park debut during the popular Boo Fest and Fright Fest events in 2023, and were such a big hit with guests that they were quickly incorporated into their Holiday in the Park event as well. And in 2024, they even premiered a Merry Monster Holiday Puppet Show, featuring a puppet version of the Monster Mansion's own Buzzbee. Six Flags has almost exclusively used the Looney Tunes characters as walk-around mascots in their parks since the 90s, so it's quite possible that these may be the only original IP characters at any Six Flags park. It's safe to say the Monster Mansion's recent refurbishment has really paid off. The ride has received another new lease on life, and Six Flags Over Georgia is embracing the attraction more than ever.
And it's a real commitment on the part of Six Flags Over Georgia to keep this going. They really do care about their fans, because you're absolutely right. It would be a lot easier to just knock it down and put a new ride up or something. but it's a cultural icon of Atlanta. They really put some money into it this year and really wanted to make it nice for the fans, which I've often talked to the animators and said, that's great that the park did that, because it was fine and they could have just left it alone, but Six Flags Over Georgia wanted to make that commitment to improve it.
And it's all thanks to the hardworking creatives, both past and present, who have worked on this incredible attraction. When people talk about immersive dark rides and impressive animatronics, the praise is usually heaped onto the Imagineers at Disney or the crew at Universal Studios. But what really struck me during our tour was how much this small team really cares about this place. From the largest monster to the smallest flower, every detail is handled with so much love and care.
Our shop takes pride in it because most of us grew up in this area, so it's kind of cool working on this ride. And we get it. We understand what it means to the community and the area.
Mark Jones knows the names of monsters that I didn't even realize had names, and Douglas Kincaid's passion for his craft is undeniable. Walking through the mansion with them as they eagerly pointed out future improvements they'd like to carry out made it clear that the Monster Mansion is in great hands. With a team like this at the helm, we're sure to be riding through the marsh for years to come. Thank you so much for watching our second video about the Monster Mansion. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to Jamie Sebastian from the Six Flags Over Georgia marketing department for making all of this happen, and a big thanks to Douglas Kincaid and everyone in the animations department. This would not have been possible without them. It was one of the coolest things ever. We are super thankful. And to learn more about the history of the Monster Mansion, you can check out our first short documentary all about it, linked in the description below, and we'll see you next time.